Hey everyone, this is Billy. I'm here with Steve and George from Red Hat. Steve and George, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
No.
No.
Oh well. So Billy and I go. Well, it feels like forever, Billy. But it's
Yeah.
been what, 3 years, maybe?
Yeah, three, exact. It does feel like it has been a long time.
Yeah. So we worked at IBM
Oh,
together. Oh, you're right.
sorry. Is there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, sorry. I had a live stream playing in the background, and that was messing with my. Yeah. uh,
Yeah.
so
We all know those experiences of
yeah.
doing all the technical problems. Yeah. So So Steve Paul worked for Red Hat. Used to work for IBM. Now the a developer advocate and the Quarkus community manager liaison thing, and obviously out talking about Quarkus at roadshows.
And I'm George. I'm a member of the core Quarkus team, and I've been basically working on Quarkus, like various facets of it, for the past couple years now. So yeah, it's been an exciting ride, and we're always excited to be able to come to these events and share the Quarkus love with everybody.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm going to quickly get started and go through just some of our announcements. But thanks you guys for joining us. I'll drop you out the live stream for right now, so you can get a drink or anything like that before we get started. All right. So I'll get started. You know, Steve and George are here, and they'll be talking about Quarkus on part of their Quarkus World Tour. But for our announcements. Again, thank you everyone for coming to our meetup group. And again, thank you VMware Tanju for providing the fees to meet up to run our group. Hopefully, some point here we'll get back to meeting in person, and hopefully, well, at least we're still thanking YRC Freight for when they were providing our in-person space for that. And then, of course, Red Hat for providing the speakers for tonight. So news of the month. I guess I probably covered this in the previous month, but just in case, Java 16 was released last month, March 18th, I believe it would have been. And also concurrently, or maybe the day after, there was also Java Mission Control Java Mission Control 8 was released. And of course, that's what you can use for instrumenting your Java applications and kind of getting back debug information from there. So yeah, both of those have been released, and of course, then we're on to getting to like Java 17, but we'll kind of talk about that later on. As of right now, not many JEPs have been finalized, which is pretty normal since we're not even a month out, or just barely a month out from the previous release. But as maybe more JEPs actually get added to that release, we may talk about them here as well. It looks like there could be some pretty good ones coming. Also, this is kind of for my team that I work on at Oracle now. But we have our Inside Java newscast, and it's pretty similar to kind of what we're doing right here. We're kind of covering what's going on in the Java world, but definitely check it out. We release it bi-weekly by my colleague Nikolai Parlog, and he kind of covers some of the things that are kind of happening right now in the world of Java. So definitely give that a check out. Usually we try to keep the videos under 10 minutes, so it's a pretty quick and easy listen. For other releases, a big thing. So as I mentioned, the Java 16 release was released last month. And if you're kind of wondering about whether or not various popular tools that you and libraries you use a lot are compatible with the newest release, definitely check out this first link. It's a Java release compatibility chart, and it shows you whether or not something's compatible with it. It's not like it might be slightly behind out of date, so it's possible that something that is compatible hasn't yet been updated on that chart, but it can give you a pretty good idea. If something is green on that chart, then it should be actually working. So it's just one of those. It's like if you see something that's maybe not compatible, it might be compatible, but if something is compatible on there, it definitely should be good to go if you want to then move up to Java 16. And which would definitely recommend. There's a lot of really great changes to it, to the Java language in it. Other news, we're seeing some conferences actually getting back to in-person, but the first one, J4K I/O, they're coming up here on June 9th. But then KCDC is actually returning again this year. It'll be September 15th through 17th. And again, it'll be in person here in Kansas City, or at least that's the plan as of right now. And also, Nebraska Code will be in person just up in Lincoln, Nebraska, June 13th, or not June, but July 13th to July 15th. So, yeah, it would be really cool to actually kind of get back out of our houses again. I think we're all pretty Zoom fatigued, so it'll be really great to see people face to face again. And lastly, we got our next meetup. Go ahead and got it scheduled. So Michael Redlick, he will be joining us to talk about getting started with Jakarta NoSQL and MongoDB. So that should be a really great meetup, and that will be that'll be May 20th, again at 5:15. And the link to that is below, and I'll get this slide deck sent out as well to everyone. So you can just copy the links. And of course, actually, if you're in the meetup group, you can also go ahead and click it here. Or if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll get the notification about that as well. All right. And that's it. I guess if there's anybody have any questions or anything, kind of maybe post them up here quickly. You can maybe answer them while Steve and George get ready. But I'll get them added back into the stream. Hey.
It's so good watching a master at work.
No, not at all. All right, so I'll give you control, Steve. And
thank you.
Is our title card up here going to be any issue, or is it fine up there? The little Kansas KC jug up in the top right hand corner.
Oh, yes, fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, I will go ahead and see there's no questions. I'll go ahead and drop out for now. And if I see any questions, if anybody has any questions, talked with Steve and George before. If you have questions during the presentation, just go ahead and add them when you ask them, and I'll pop in and let you know you have a question, and see if we can get it answered. But definitely, please jump in and participate. I think Steve and George may cover it here in a moment, but it's going to be a bit of an interactive live stream as well, kind of like our last meetup. So I'll pop out, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, now I've got to find my slides. There we go. So, good slides. So first thing is thank you for hosting us. We have, I'm trying to figure what the numbers are, but we're your number 7, I think, out of the list. We have another 30 more to go, and the way things are going, they'll probably never come to the end because so many people are interested. Anyway, so we're trying to do this. We have this rock and roll theme because it's fun and it gives an excuse for coming up with some good graphics. But of course, we want to do this world tour. So the idea is that you'll help us make this a great event. And then Billy will ask you, and I'll let Billy work out how he wants to do this. But we have swag. We have some cool T-shirts. So probably we'll be able to send Billy some T-shirts, and maybe he can send them on rather than keep them all for himself. Okay, so here's how this works. We're going to do some basic intros, which I think we've basically done now. I'm going to do just a small number of slides about what Quarkus is, so you get a little bit of a sense. And then you're going to see some live coding and basically ask us questions, because we're just going to code, or rather, I'm not going to do the code. George is going to do the coding, but we're just going to go through this stuff. And if I remember something, I'll ask him to try it out, or we'll just discuss it. And the more that you ask us questions about what you'd like to see or what information you want to know, the better, because otherwise you're just going to watch us just talk about code. Right. So there's us. I did introduce myself. Georgius, do you want to say any more about yourself and your relationship to Quarkus?
No, I mean, I covered it. Like, I'm part of the core team, and I do all sorts of Quarkus stuff. So yeah, I think that covers it for this.
Yeah. So any question about Quarkus you can answer.
That's kind of a stretch with the project the size of Quarkus. Any's a stretch, but most would be probably more accurate.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So as I said, as an audience, and I know that you're out there watching this, please ask questions if you can, and we'll just see where it goes. So it's live. So if you want to know about something to do with how Quarkus and Spring works, then ask. If you want to know, I don't know, Kafka, you name it. If you say anything about Quarkus, you want to know more details, then just ask. And maybe we'll even be able to show you something. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So the other thing is that this is a real taster. There's Quarkus is a fabulous set of stuff. If you want to know more, you want to if you like what you hear, you want us to come back and do a deeper dive, then just ask Billy, and we'll come back and do more. Right. So let's talk about Quarkus. And before I talk about Quarkus, I just want to set the scene, because when you talk to developers nowadays about what the problems are and what they're challenging, what's challenging them, I'd say pretty much I see these sorts of three categories. Lots of us, and not everybody, but lots of us are challenged by needing a new performance profile, which I will talk later on in this thing about. But we're looking for a different performance structure. We're looking for something that fits into the cloud, so different economics. So that's the pressure. How do we make our applications work in those environments and give us the performance profiles that we need? The other thing is app environment. We have so many different places to run Java nowadays, and each of them are subtly different, and sometimes more than subtly different. So again, as a Java developer, how do you get your head around all this stuff, and what's out there to help you make it less painful? And then finally, the other thing that Java developers are all under the same pressure. If you work for a business or you're producing product software, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the thing that everybody's going is productivity, faster time to value. So those are the three things here that are generally driving lots of people's thoughts about what they want to do with Java next. So how does Quarkus help you in that? Well, and again, I'll go through these things in more detail later on, but really, I'd say here are the things that we want to talk about that we think make Quarkus different. So Quarkus is really good at bridging the gap between your code and what Kubernetes wants. If you've tried using Kubernetes, you understand sometimes it can be hard, and Quarkus can help you get your application running on a Kubernetes environment very easily. A lot more help in that space. It's also good at helping you use Graal. So you've probably heard about Graal VM, and you've probably seen all the press about how you can take your Java code and turn it into native, and it's all fantastic. And then you try and do it, and then you realize that actually it's not as easy as you might think, because Graal makes a lot of assumptions about how Java. So what Graal is doing is looking at a Java application, saying there are certain things that the way your Java application works that will not translate to native. And so Graal sort of leaves it up to you to figure out how to deal with those edges. And so what Quarkus will do, and maybe we'll get to demo it, but what Quarkus is designed to do is to help remove those sharp edges and just make it so much easier for you to take your Java code and compile it to native. But it's not just a native compiler, and you'll see that too. Performance overheads, because of the way that Quarkus is designed, and again, we'll talk about it in more detail, but Quarkus gives you some really good performance, whether or not you want to go all the way to a cloud native environment, or whether you just want to run on a VM. Quarkus can give you good performance improvements regardless of what the platform is. And then the other one, amazing productivity, which is what we're going to show you in a minute, is just amazing. And so much more. If you go to the quarkus.io website, which is that little thing at the bottom of each of the slides, and have a look, you will see just so much technology out there that is all around this space, that's all related to Quarkus, to help you deal with these sorts of problems. Right, so let's just dig into these a little bit, because it's worth pointing out this, because there are lots of misconceptions about what Quarkus is about, and people tend to focus on certain parts of that and don't realize the bigger picture. So we just want to clear some of these things up. So Quarkus is all about containers. So it's containers first. Everything is designed with the idea of you're probably going to take your application and put in a container. And pretty much the stats say that 80% of Java developers out there are delivering code in a container, not necessarily a Kubernetes environment, but container first. So you need to be thinking about tuning your application from a container point of view. And what we realized is that if you tune your Java application, the runtimes you use, the performance profiles you tune for, is actually ones that you'd want to deploy to Kubernetes. If you do that, it turns out that you can get great performance everywhere else. Right? So that's why we say Quarkus is Kubernetes a native rather than cloud native, because actually cloud native is quite a wide set of technologies. And if you say you're tuning for cloud native, then actually you're probably tuning for one option. So if you could easily be tuning for things like Cloud Foundry or something. And if you say you're tuning for Cloud Foundry, then actually that isn't the best profile for running on Kubernetes. But what we have seen is if you tune for Kubernetes and you make everything focus on that, doesn't mean it's the only place that Quarkus runs, but it means that the performance that you get is going to be optimal, not only on Kubernetes, but other places as well. Okay, so look, some performance numbers. And for those of you who have heard about it, here are some numbers. So lots of little boxes here, but look, on the top left, it says there's just a basic REST benchmark, but you can see Quarkus and native is a 12 meg consumption of memory. Well, it's RSS, so it's memory consumption of container, right? It's not just your heap. And if you look at the next one along, it talks about 73 meg. So that's Quarkus, that's your Quarkus application, not compiled to native, running on a standard JVM, gives you 73 meg. And then if you take Quarkus out of the equation altogether, then your memory consumption goes back to what you'd have just by using standard JVMs. So you can see Quarkus is going to give you good performance, even if you don't need to go to native. And even if you don't need to go to Kubernetes, Quarkus is there to help you with those sorts of performance improvements. So you can see that, there's a couple of benchmarks there you can see on memory consumption and also on boot, on how long does it take you to start your application. Again, the same sorts of things. You can see the green numbers are Quarkus. You can see Quarkus native is awesome startup. Quarkus with normal JIT and hotspot is still pretty impressive compared to what you could expect if you didn't have Quarkus in the mix. Okay, so there we are. Last words. Quarkus's performance is awesome. Quarkus is designed for this environment that we know everybody needs to be running in, right? And we know that if we tune your application, give you the framework to run in that environment, we know that it will benefit you wherever else you're going. So even if you're not planning to go to cloud, Quarkus is still going to give you some great performance. Okay, so how is this possible? Well, we'll come back to that because I want to talk about something else, or rather I want somebody to do a demo, right? Whenever you talk about Java applications and you talk about frameworks and standards and all this sort of stuff, it's always focused on APIs. And what I really love about Quarkus is that the Quarkus team have not only considered your technical challenges, they've also considered how you develop in these environments, right? And I'm going to leave this screen up here. I'm going to ask Billy to switch over to Georges and hand off to Georges to give us some live coding demos of the developer joy bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so Steve described on a high level what Quarkus is, right? And he'll have a lot more to say as we progress. But at this point, we really wanted to show you what does Quarkus code actually look like, and what is this developer joy thing all about? So here I have a Quarkus application that I've generated from our project generator website, which is code.quarkus.io. You'll see a bunch of options here for everything from databases, REST APIs, like NoSQL databases, Kafka, anything you need. We have it covered. But I'm not going to use it because we're just use what I already have, which is a basic application. For the moment, it's just a basic application, JAX-RS, which will return like some very simple strings, and we'll make that we'll make that more complicated as we go along. So what is the developer joy? The developer joy in Quarkus basically means that we start Quarkus in using this Quarkus dev mode, right? And dev mode means that we are going to run in a mode that is not what will be delivered when we actually run this in production, but it's a mode that will give us access as developers to so many features that'll make our lives easier. And what the most prominent feature is the live reload. So let's say here I have my JAX-RS resource. So I expect when I hit my browser at hello, I'll get a hello response, since I'm just returning the hello string here. And let's actually see that in action. Okay, so I got hello, right? Which is what I expected, obviously. And now check this out, man. I just edit code in my IDE. I don't have anything else set up, right? I just ran MV and Quarkus Dev. I edit code in my IDE. I refresh my browser, and I automatically see the change applied like super fast. Like it restarted Quarkus so quickly, and I didn't even notice the change. And that's awesome, right? But you might be thinking, maybe this is just limited to method bodies. Well, that's not really the case, because let's say I want to add a new method, and I'll go and I'll say path 2, and I'll say hello 2, and I'll refresh, and I'll do hello 2, and I didn't get it right. Oh, and this is another thing that Quarkus shows me, like in this developer mode, it shows me all the resources that are available. So not only does it make live reloading really fast, but it gives us as developers a lot of information to help us debug problems. So obviously I did hello 2 instead of hello /2. I made a mistake again. So there we go. I got hello 2, right? So all I did was I added a new method that just live reloaded. And let's say I wanted to use a query param as well. And I want to say query param name string name, and also give it a default value. And let's say default value is world. Hello world. Oops, hello name. And I go here, I'll get hello world. Obviously, if I do name, I get that. So you see that I can make any change I want, and I'm going to show you even more changes. To the point of this, like this first part of the demo, is to show you that with Quarkus you get to work in a way that's very different from your traditional like app servers, or like other frameworks like Spring Boot or whatever. You have this live reload thing, like with zero configuration, live reload, that is super fast. And because Quarkus is so fast anyway to start up, you don't even see the effect of the reload happening. Let's make this slightly more complex. Let's say I want to add classes, right? So I'm going to say greeting service. I'm going to call this, I want to have this be a CDI bean. Also, I'm going to use some configuration. So I'm going to say prefix, and I'm going to use, I'm going to pass some configuration into this service, right? Because I don't want to hard code things. I want to get it. I want to get my configuration from the environment. So I'll just go greet string name, and I'll say prefix plus name. Okay, so I have a CDI bean here, right? And what I want to do is I want to use that service inside my resource. So like, let's say this would be the business logic, and I'll take the business logic and move it out of the actual JAX-RS controller, sorry, JAX-RS resource, and I'll say, well, actually, let me do that on the other one since I already had the query param, and I'll go here and I'll say greet name, and let's see if I actually get this right. I did get it right, but the magic here is that I added more classes and I have the configuration here, right? So this is the greeting prefix that I used here. This is the property. And if I change this as well, like I change that and I just restart. So what the whole point here is like everything you change automatically gets reflected onto the running application, right? And this is such a time saver because you don't have to configure anything. Everything just works out of the box. It works great, like with much larger applications than this. You still get like really fast reload. So your productivity is like really boosted by this. Now, what else does this dev mode have? Well, it has a lot of stuff, but another thing that it has is what we call the dev UI, right? So in this development mode, again, it does not exist in production mode because you don't want a production application to expose all these details. But in this dev mode, you actually have a whole set of features that help you out to see like what the application does. For example, you can see a list of the CDI beans, and if you click on a bean, it'll take you to the IDE and will show you like you can actually like see introspect, like maybe I missed, for example, in this case, maybe I missed like to annotate the service. And if I go here, I actually, Quarkus doesn't even start properly because the CDI beans can't be wired up, but it gives me such great information about like what's wrong. So I see here like unsatisfied dependency greeting service, and it's telling me, yeah, that it can't exec. So you don't even have to leave the browser most of the time to see this great information. So you go restart here, and if I move back, let's say I want to see my endpoints. So I have a list of endpoints that I'll make that a little smaller. I have like one endpoint now because there's only the hello one. If I added another endpoint, then everything would show up. So my point here is that the dev mode gives you so much information that'll help you out while you're developing your application. And that's what Steve mentioned about us being more productive and getting more stuff done. So that covers like the developer joy part of what we wanted to show you. Steve, you want to move on with slides, or do you want me to show something else on this part?
Well, so let's double check. So because I'm not, you do such an awesome job, and it goes fast. So let's just go around this again. Everything you showed, you did not terminate Quarkus. You had it running, dev mode running, and you made all the changes.
Yeah, right, exactly. So all I ran initially, I gotta find it because it's like way up top. Yeah. All I ran here was the MVN Quarkus dev. So that's like a main plugin, starts Quarkus in development mode. I never stopped it, right? Even when I made a mistake and everything like blew up when I was missing that CDI annotation, Quarkus continued to run in the background, right? It's just that the application itself wasn't run. But once I made the fix, everything just continued to work. Or let's say I missed this, right? I forget to configure the configuration property. Quarkus will tell me that, oops, you're missing a configuration property that is needed somewhere in the application. And then based on that information, I know, oh, right, I missed it. I'll add it. I'll restart, and everything will work as I expected it to. And of course, like I showed, I change it, everything just works.
Yeah. I'll kind of get going with like maybe a few questions here, and hopefully that'll kind of encourage other people to kind of ask some. So my background's much more in Spring Boot, but I'm just curious, like, does it have like a response entity like Spring Boot does for like wrapping responses? That way you can like send like a custom status code, or
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent question. Okay, so response status, let's say like 201 or something.
Nice.
Body, what is it? Entity, right? Entity build, and then I go here, and yeah, basically, well, let me do it from the console. The network, and I say got 201 here, right?
Nice.
So yeah, this is the JAX-RS spec. It's not like it doesn't use the same annotations as Spring Web, but they are very, very close. Like if you know Spring Web, moving to JAX-RS is very, very easy because conceptually everything just maps, right?
Okay. So we got another question then from Brandon. Can Quarkus handle errors like an I/O error or an out-of-memory error, or is it just exception types?
Okay, so no, an IO error. An IO error depends on what kind of IO error you're talking about. So, like a
Yeah,
typical IO error in your application, yeah, that'll be handled fine. Out of memory in dev mode, no, that would shut down. That would freeze everything basically.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I think you kind of already more or less touched on this, but the second question I had, and it kind of goes back probably a little bit to the JAX-RS stuff, but you can also do like an annotation of like at exception handler. So that way you have like maybe a lot of times like I do like some like exceptions, like I have like a client exception for when I get like bad clients. It's then like some Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Handle like let's give illegal argument exception.
Yeah.
Handle, and like I could pass various things here, but I could just let's say response like no content, right? I think I have to build it. Yes, and let's say here I would say throw new illegal argument exception. And I'm expecting no content, which is what, 204, something like that. 204. Okay.
Yeah.
So now if I hit it, I hope to get 204, which I do.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's actually a very good point because this annotation is not part of JAX-RS, but it's a Quarkus specific thing that we have. But it maps, yes, it maps very well into. If you use like Spring's like what's that controller advice and like I don't exactly remember what the annotation name is, but yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, and then if anybody else, just be sure to push your questions into the live stream comments, and I'll ask Steve and George them. So, all right, I'll let you guys continue.
Okay,
Thanks, thanks, Billy.
Okay, so if you can put the slides up, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on at a high level. Thank you. Ha, my slides. Okay, let's go back to my so I can see them. Tech is so amazing, isn't it? Do you remember when we used to do things in person?
Good times.
Yes. Oh dear, where's it gone? Oh, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so bear with me. Okay, so how is this possible? What have you seen? So performance and developer joy, and they're all wrapped together. Okay. So how do we get this stuff? Well, we take out all the stuff you don't need. We take out all the bad code. Well, it's not really bad code, but it's just a different way of looking at how applications should be constructed and about when things happen when you're building applications. So look, let's talk a little bit about these things. So Billy will recognize this because it's one of my traditional profiles. Let's talk about performance first because it's relevant, and we're just gonna dig in a bit, and then we'll go back to doing more of the coding. So, as a Java developer, if you've been around long enough, you will have seen benchmarks, and Java benchmarks always have this shape, which is the red line is throughput and the white line is memory, and over time, it takes time to go from having no throughput to maximum throughput. And as part of the process of getting to the point where application is up and running and able to deal with all the workload, you have to consume memory, of course. And there's almost always this little spike at the top, which goes away. And that spike tends to be due to all of the stuff that you're loading and the jitting, all this stuff that's going on, all the effort that goes in to give you a fast running application is all front loaded. But as we're working out, a lot of it is where you do that front loading can be different from the way we've been thinking about it. So anyway, what we're looking for is performance profiles that look a little bit more like this, where none of these peaks. We want to get very fast startup. We want to have maximum throughput as soon as possible, and we want to have consistent memory usage, because we, in these new environments that we're running in, memory is currency, and if you have applications that go up and down in memory consumption, then that can cause you problems. And so quite often you want to just be able to get something that's at a good solid throughput with a good set of memory consumption, and not have all these horrible ups and downs. So again, going back to why, you look at these pictures, and this lag, the length of time it takes for your application to get started to do maximum throughput, and all this extra memory that's being used that you probably don't need to use later on. So you're paying for memory, and then of course that goes away. Anyway, so all this stuff is happening because we're bringing up the application. So the JVM, the frameworks, your application, it all contributing towards starting your application, of course. So the JITting and the loading of classes and all these wonderful stuff happens, and then your application finally gets to the point where it's got maximum throughput. Okay, fair enough. So if you want to go from this sort of profile to one that's more like what we're trying to achieve, you have to start thinking differently about how to achieve that. So when you look at the three things that are happening in terms of an application startup, obviously you've got your application, and obviously you have some initialization process, and there's a compiler in there. And for Java, that's the JIT. Okay, so what we're looking at is saying, well, rather than do all of this stuff at initialization time, let's look at what could be done at build time. So you have to scratch your head and think about this, but basically think about all the things that your application is doing over and over and over again during initialization, because it's based on the idea that it doesn't quite know what the answer is going to be. And so it's all this, well, we'll do it at runtime because that's going to give us the maximum flexibility. But we know actually, in reality, the chances are that the choices that you've made in terms of, I don't know, what classes are on the class path, what service providers are using, the chances are that they aren't changing anyway, and that actually there's a lot of sort of self-introspection going on during initialization that's to give you this dynamism that you don't use. So why don't we think about taking a lot of the stuff that assumes things are going to be dynamic, but actually take them out and move them into the build time, into build time. So actually compile before you run your application. Think about doing initialization or as much as you can before you run your application. Okay? So it's a nice idea. The catch for all of us is that there is still a lot of dynamism in there, and actually the level of dynamism, so dynamic class loading, all these sorts of things that go on, your use of reflection, if you're using reflection libraries, these are all things we rely on. And actually, they're pretty nasty things for Graal. Graal doesn't like a lot of that reflection, and would in fact wants you to actually sort of move away from that. So that's a challenge for us. The other challenge is that if you just do something like AOT, so you just take the JIT out, then actually that's good for performance for certain applications, but is not necessarily good for all applications, because what you're losing if you don't do the JITting is you lose a lot of the reoptimization that can take place when your application is going to be running for a very long time. So you sort of want to have choices. Okay. So I think I've said this. We're all looking very carefully at using something like Graal as a way of giving us the native compilation, and that's a really good tool for us to give us the performance we want. but the choices for using Graal come with the fact that you have to deal with a lot of the sharp edges that Graal is saying needs to happen in terms of thinking about changing the spec. One of the things that Quarkus will give you is a much a nicer story, a nicer experience with using Graal. Okay, so let me just wrap up a little bit here. So I've got some charts, but think about what I just said. So think about you have a standard JVM, and what we're doing now is saying, can we put at build time how much of the application initialization, the framework initialization, can we do ahead of time? Can we actually work out what needs to happen and have it happen at build time? In which case, we can actually front load all of that discovery and all that initialization, so it's done up ahead at front time. Okay, so you can see those little green boxes, and the top layer shows you Quarkus doing things at build time, but then that working on a standard JVM. Okay, so remember that Quarkus is not just giving you native compilation; it's also there to give you these performance benefits in a standard environment. But then if you want to go to Graal, then Graal is going to help you make that happen as well. So you can see the bottom line. Right. So when I talk about the magic that goes on, this isn't a very particularly good example of the magic. But if you think about this, I said about things like, reflection or whatever. Here's a really good, it's a simple example. Suppose you've got a configuration file and it's got a class name in it. Okay. And then you probably have some bunch of code somewhere, it might be a JDBC driver or something. And somewhere there's a bunch of code that's going on that's saying, go read this string and go and get some configs and then go to instantiate a class and then do some stuff. If we're absolutely certain about that configuration, we don't need to do all that reflection. We can go straight to the work. So we can create code that will drive the driver directly. And if we do that, then we take out this code that is not only going to be expensive, it's also something that Graal doesn't like. So we win both ways. Okay. And so again, I'll say this again, but basically what's happening here is Quarkus is doing this for Java applications. And as a really great side effect, is that you can take those applications and compile them to native much easier than if you try and do it directly yourself. Right. Of course, I forgot what comes next. Yes. Oh, and then extensions. So there's this basic idea of what we're talking about, but actually, if you then go even further and you think about all the applications, all the frameworks, all the tools that we use, wouldn't it be good if you could put a little bit more smarts into those little extensions, into those tools, so that Quarkus knows even more about them, so it can be even smarter about this reloading that you've seen and initialization, all that sorts of stuff. Right, so I now just finish up. So this leads you into, you've seen the live coding thing. So again, think about, we've got this smarts that are built into build time, right? And so that means that your development cycles, which you can see here, which is code, build, run, which we all know how long that takes if you're having to do that on a regular basis. What we're doing now is introducing this new mode in the middle. So you have dev, so you have your code dev time, you have your build time. That's fine. And now you have dev mode. Right, which is this thing that's running in conjunction with the JVM you're running your application on, and that's why we get this massive development cycle, this life cycle that you're seeing, right? Because we're putting all the smarts in that space as well. Yes, so there we go. Code deployment. That's the point. You've already got a running system. Yes, it's in this dev mode environment. You make code changes. We use all the smarts that we've figured out, how your application works, how your frameworks work, to give you that sort of amazing startup and that amazing, I don't know what to call it, this great live coding thing. And maybe we'll get to demo this to you, but this thing goes more than just running it on the desktop. You can do the same thing inside a container, and you can do the same thing in a remote container. So I'll let you think about that. Okay, so that's me. I've done the spiel. I'll hand over. And do we have Billy? If you want to switch back to Georgius, and we can see if there's any questions.
No questions right now. I guess maybe one question to the dev mode stuff.
Yep.
Is there any limits to it? Like I said, I mean, kind of like some of the traditional ones, was like adding a method, adding a class. Is there any kind of things that that you can kind of run into when doing that?
No, because basically what happens is the way it works is that an entire class loader is dropped and a new class loader is used with the new code, which means that it isn't instrumentation based, which means that you can change whatever you want. Like traditional instrumentation, yeah, you were limited to maybe you couldn't add a method, or you could add a method, but you couldn't add a class, or maybe you could only change the method signature, or sorry, you couldn't change the method signature, only the method body. But no, when you're using this class loader based reload, let's call it, then you don't suffer from any of these. Everything just works, right? Well, it works because we've done a ton of work to make it work, but for the end user, it just works, and you don't run into this any of these problems.
Nice.
Also, you can add changes to your POM XML, right?
So yeah, I was just about to ask, like adding like a new class or changing the class. So yeah, go ahead though.
Yeah, let's say if I were doing this, right? Okay, I started dev mode. And then I wanted to, let's say, add another extension to my POM XML. Now, if I do that, basically Quarkus can't, let's say, use the class loader reload method. And what it has to do in this case, specifically for the POM XML, it has to monitor POM XML, and then it has to like rebuild the entire thing. But that works as well, right?
Yeah.
It just works in a slightly different fashion.
Okay, nice. And like maybe also if you have like static like HTML or other files under that, like it would detect changes there as well and reload.
Yes, very good point. Okay, so let's see that in action, basically. So if I go to it should be index HTML, right? I think that'll work. Okay, your new cloud native application is ready, and I think this is it. Your new, yes, congratulations, you have cloud application. Okay, so if I change this and I reload,
Nice.
yes, it's right there. Yeah, so all this stuff, yeah, all the stuff that you would expect to work just works.
Awesome. We do have a couple of questions now.
Okay, cool.
So like the first one again from Brandon, can custom extensions be created? So, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So basically that's what Steve started talking about, right? And it's also what these things here are. So all of these in our code.quarkus.io are extensions, right? So we have an extension, let's say, for Jackson, or we have an extension for Optiplanner, Apache Tika, Pico CLI. So all these are extensions. So at a very like fundamental level, Quarkus is kind of like its own build system, and it defines these various like extension points that extensions can then hook into to take advantage of the awesome feature set that Steve was describing, and like provide, let's say, smarter integration with these various frameworks. I wouldn't say it's not hard to write an extension, but it's not trivial either. The basic problem is that we don't have good material at the moment on how to write these extensions, but that will Steve and I have been talking about this, and hopefully we'll have some better material soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have another question, though this could be a good maybe question at the end of the live stream, but yeah, I'll let you decide if you want to answer it now or later. What are some of the top challenges to wider spread use for Quarkus?
Oh, that's easy. That's just some people being aware of it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's one of the reasons we're doing the
We're
World
doing
Tour.
it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So the other, so I'd say it's literally people being aware of it. And the other thing is, and this is just me as a developer advocate because I talk to people about it, is perception. And quite often people look at Quarkus and they've got sort of blinkered views because they've read things. And somebody said it's just for compiling native code, compiling Java to native. And it's like, does that, but it does more. So I think people have perceptions that Quarkus is not as big as it is. And it's, as I said, it's just mostly perception. When people begin to understand that you can take your Spring application and with a little bit of tweaking, you can get all these benefits, it's like, why would you want to do that? Yeah.
I guess one question, because so almost fundamentally every application is just taking data and writing it to a database. Is there like some rough equivalent to like a Spring data within the Quarkus ecosystem, or?
Excellent. Yeah, excellent question. I can actually show that now if you want. But before I show it, there's two answers to that.
Yeah.
First of all,
actually, real quick before you get to that, just because it's a bit longer. Yeah.
Sure,
So
sure.
I guess two questions pretty much. Is your Quarkus free to use? Are there any license costs? And I guess also if there's like any sort of support as well, if you want to.
Okay. Yeah. So everything Red Hat does is free, right? So it's free to use. So there's no strings attached. If you want to download it from Maven, whatever, use it. No strings attached. But there is, if you want support from Red Hat, like enterprise level support, then that is provided as well. So you could get a support contract from Red Hat, which will ensure that we'll always be there for you when you take your application, when you're developing your application or take your application to production.
Yeah, but it's open source. Was it Apache license?
I'm pretty sure. Let me see.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're Apache license. Yes.
Yeah.
Quarkus. Where does that? Should say that somewhere. Yeah, Apache 2.0. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Go ahead and then hear me. Go ahead and actually.
Databases. Yes.
Post this up as well. Then for the going back to the previous question of is there equivalent to Spring data in Quarkus?
Excellent. Right. So there's two answers to that question. First of all, we have a compatibility layer with Spring Data, which means that if I add the Quarkus Spring Data extension, then you could use Spring Data exactly like you know it. So you just define an interface and everything would just work. Just the same way, like you just write those methods, they'd automatically be translated to whatever query is supposed to be translated to, and that would work. But we have a different approach. Well, let's say that the Quarkus native solution is a different approach, a different opinion, basically, on how persistence can be done. You don't have to use it, but that's what we like prescribe, and this is what I'm going to show you right now. So again, based on Hibernate. And what it tries to do is make stuff really easy for you. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to add Hibernate ORM Panache. So what we do, we call it Panache, right? It's Hibernate with like a flare or something like that. Yeah, we have a lot of French people on the team. So nice. Basically, it kind of resembles Active Record, as you'll see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to say, let's say fruit, right? And I'll have an entity, which will be a fruit. And I'm going to say extends Panache entity. And you're going to see what that whole magic thing is. I could add private fields with like getters and setters, but I'm just going to make it public here. And I want to say a fruit that has a name. Panache entity will give me an ID as well. So I'll use that default. What else do I want here? I want to, yes, right. I want to, excuse me, I got to start this again. Okay, so I want a fruit resource. So the fruit resource will be what returns, it'll be the JAX-RS endpoint that will return all this. Let's go path. Fruit. There's some stuff that went on here in the console. I'll explain once I'm done. I wanted to show you, the first thing I want to do is like show you what the actual result looks like. Find all and import find all. Okay, I'm gonna go fruit list all. So let's call this list all. And this will be get. Okay, so if I go here, what I do have, I'm going to make sure that Hibernate drops and creates the schema. And I also have an import SQL file. So all this is like defaults for Quarkus. You have an import SQL. It'll be executed by Hibernate. What this does is this adds some fruits to the database. And if I go now and I hit fruit, it should.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. I got an excellent error. Yes. So I'll explain that as well.
Yeah.
I'll just add this blocking here and I'll refresh and everything will work. Great. So there's a lot of things that went on here. I just wanted to get like the final result out to show you how it's done.
Nice.
So from a coding perspective, what our panache layer is, it looks like the active record pattern that people might be familiar with from Ruby or stuff like that. So basically what it does is like it adds a whole bunch of methods to the fruit where you could like find by ID or find with you have a query or whatever. So all that awesome stuff works. We also have a panache layer where it looks like a repository instead of an active record. So you could use that flavor as well. So that's the first thing that was going on here. The error you saw when I took this away is because what I'm using here is I'm using a reactive JAX-RS implementation, which means that when you use this, you're never supposed to block the IO thread, right? So everything, all the IO is supposed to be non-blocking. If it's going to be blocking, you have to add this blocking annotation.
Nice. Okay.
We also have like a reactive version of Hibernate. So I could have used that, and that would not require the blocking. Instead of returning a list here, I would be returning like a completion stage or of a list or something like that. We could show that if there's interest as well. The other thing that happened here is that you notice that I didn't configure a database anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So this is just all stuff for the next part of the demo. The only thing I configured for Hibernate was to drop and create the schema. So you're probably wondering, like, yeah, what happened? Where's the database? And that is basically what was going on when I started the application. What Quarkus did was because it knows that you're using a Hibernate with Postgres. So because I added like the Postgres extension, it knows that because it's Postgres and because you have it configured a URL, okay, what I'll do is I'll start a Docker container with Postgres and I'll configure Quarkus, the extension, to actually talk to that Postgres database. So like that makes it so easy.
Wow,
Just
that's
jump
awesome.
into coding. Yeah, you just jump in. You don't even have to know anything about the configuration. Obviously, when you go to production, you're not going to use this, and Quarkus won't allow you to use it. But when you're developing, you just jump right in, and everything just works.
So I guess with that, can you also like specify to use like this specific post or specific Docker image or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Exactly. Dev services. It's called the image.
That's fine. There's a way there. It's one of those maybe just so people know when they're trying out that you can like put that image.
Yes, you can obviously do that.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. So we actually do have a few more questions that have come together. So let me post them now. So one of them, can Quarkus run in OpenShift? And perhaps also, maybe I'll add a little bit to it. Is there anything, because OpenShift is Red Hat and Quarkus is Red Hat, is there any sort of virtuous cycle between there?
Yes. So, like Steve mentioned, like we're Kubernetes native, right? So what we try to do is not only make the performance on Kubernetes great, but also make the integration with Kubernetes great. So OpenShift being like a Kubernetes distribution means that everything we do for Kubernetes also applies to OpenShift. And I can also show you in the next part of the demo how easy it is to take a Quarkus application and deploy it onto OpenShift, right? If we wanted to show that, I can do that. It takes like one command, and I'll have an application running on OpenShift. here's the properties. By the way, to like configure, I could have used Postgres like 11 or something like that.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so that's that. Okay, so with OpenShift, right? What's the deal here? We really want to be able to, like, once you're done developing, we wanted to make it super easy to deploy the application onto a cluster. And let's show that right now. What I have here is a OpenShift cluster that I've like, because we're Red Hat employees, we have access to these like demo clusters, let's call them. So they're not really powerful or anything, but they're good enough for these demo purposes. So what I'm going to do here is that I am going to, let's take out Hibernate because I don't have a database deployed or anything. So what I'm going to do is just use the hello world thing that I was using, which is, yes, this hello thing. Excellent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to package the application. So I'm going to do clean package. But I also have a Kubernetes extension, and I also have a container image Docker extension. What those do when you use them together is that Quarkus will build a container image. Like once it builds the jar, it'll also build a container image. It'll push it to Quai because I've configured it here and using under my username. And I've already logged in, so it's not going to ask for the password or anything. But it's also going to deploy this application to Kubernetes because I'm using, like, I've already logged into this cluster. So I got Kubernetes kubectl version, or I could do OC, like OC namespace. So OC is like, what is it? Not OC project. So OC is the OpenShift version of the kubectl. So I've already logged into the cluster, and if I do npm clean package dquarkus Kubernetes deploy equals true, what we're going to see now is the application. I got to skip the test because we're not going to pass. Obviously.
I do that all the time also.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
D-skip test, my favorite. So what it's doing here is it's building a container image, right? Based on the application. It's pushing it to Quay, and once it's done pushing to Quay, what it's going to do is it's going to apply some Kubernetes manifests that Quarkus automatically generates based again on all the information we know at build time for the application. It'll push that to the cluster, and we'll have our application running. Now, Quay seems to be a little slow. But yeah, let's. If we have any more questions, let's take them now before.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we actually have several questions, so this is a good time. Cool. Is it hard to debug through the components of Quarkus? As you said, it's already does a lot of work for us.
I wouldn't say it's any harder than debugging a Spring Boot application. No, like if you're used to that sort of thing, it's as easy or as hard, depending on how you see it.
It's similar, maybe. It's not any more difficult, at least.
Exactly. So basically, the application is deployed now onto our cluster. I can see that if I refresh here, I have a workload deployment here, and if I hit the application, I get what I have configured. Nice. Now, if there's a twist, right? I used a special mode here called the mutable jar, and what that mutable jar does is, if I want to, I can now this is a special mode that you're not supposed to use in production. This is just, I wanted to show the developer experience taken to another level. Right? So the another level is that I'll change code locally. I'll hit the browser, and hopefully everything on the actual on the application that's actually running on the cluster gets refreshed. So
wow, that's great.
Yeah, that's the developer enjoyed to the max.
Awesome. It's sharks with the lasers. It's amazing.
Nice. All right. Did you want to have any more of this? We've actually have a few other questions.
No,
kind
go
of
ahead. Yeah,
set.
let's go. Let's do the questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So do all of Quarkus's features work with Grail VM native?
Excellent question. Yes. So, yes, they do. That's been one of our, let's say, goals from day one, that every extension we provide as Red Hat, every extension we provide for Quarkus must work in native with GraalVM as well. If it doesn't, it's a bug, and we'll fix it. And yet that means a lot of work for us, but it also means that for users, you just take whatever extension you want, you create the native image using basically this, and everything just works.
Nice. That's awesome. Then another question we have is there any out-of-box integration with Envoy or Istio or any of these other kind of like routing services or sidecar services?
No, at the moment we don't have any integration, any out-of-the-box integration. We could easily like generate, like I showed earlier, we generate that Kubernetes manifest. We could easily generate an additional sidecar there. But if you have ideas on like what this should look like, then we're definitely open to hearing, because like for the time being, we don't have any like super concrete useful use cases for what exactly that kind of integration would look like.
Gotcha. Is there a good place that people could go to for providing that feedback? And you guys can just send me in you say it here, but also send it in like a DM, and I can include it in the description for sending that kind of feedback.
So basically, there's our Zulip chat, quarkusio.zulip.com. We'll obviously send that later on. And there's also the Quarkus dev mailing list. So yeah, we'll send you that information.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'll get that posted into the description of this chat. So if you're watching this later, it should be down there to be able to kind of give that feedback to the Quarkus team. This could be another question. This could just be, this is more maybe IntelliJ, or maybe it's also because some of the stuff was commented out. Like just someone knows like some of the highlighting isn't working. So like the Quarkus container group, image group isn't like maybe being highlighted properly. IntelliJ issue, or
that's an IntelliJ issue. Yes.
Yeah. Is it using the 2021.1 that's been kind of getting a little flamed on Twitter?
Actually, I haven't moved to that because IntelliJ struggles enough as it is with the Quarkus project, because like the Quarkus project itself has like 700 Maven modules, so it struggles enough. So until like there's a few more iterations of IntelliJ, I don't want to install it.
I gotcha. Okay. So another question I kind of had is Quarkus. Is it compatible with Java 16?
Yes. Okay, so your Java 16 application will work with Quarkus. Yes. Now Quarkus itself doesn't yet build with Java 16. There's a few like very small outstanding issues, but we should have that wrapped up as well. But for users, that doesn't it doesn't matter.
Okay.
For users, the applications just work.
Awesome. This is maybe a bit of a fun one. Is Quarkus compatible with Java 6?
6? No. No.
Oh, no. I'm sorry to sound.
Well, actually, that's a good question, because what I'm showing now is Quarkus 1.13.2, which is the latest, let's say, production release. Mm-hmm. This release is compatible with Java 8, but we just released today Quarkus 2.0.0.alpha 1. So it's the first like alpha release of our Quarkus 2 stream, but Quarkus 2 has dropped Java 8 support, and now it's Java 11 plus.
Nice.
So going forward, it'll be Java 11 plus.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. I think that's all the questions that we have for right now. So if you
Well, so I was going to say, George, just that Billy likes tests. Billy's
a big fan of it. Yes,
he's a big test. So can you show off something to do with testing?
Well, the actual awesome thing that has to do with testing isn't in this release. It's in the 2.0 stream. But I could show you like, okay, so again, with Hibernate, like the example we have with Hibernate, if I enable it again, and I go and I local history, delete, let's bring these back, revert selection, and let's say I write a fruit test. So basically this is what our tests look like usually is they're actual, most of them are actual like close to integration tests, meaning that they hit the application over the wire in order to like ascertain that everything works properly. So if I hit one of these, like the fruit body, let's say contain string apple. So if I run this test, it should run it should actually, because again, I have not configured for the test, I have not configured a database anywhere. It again will start test containers without me having to do anything, and it'll just run the test. So that's like the super very short like version that I just write a test that hits the application over the wire. Because I'm using Hibernate, test container starts and everything just worked. If I did like this, it will not work. But based on that, you need to check out if you go to the Quarkus 2, let me get that, the Quarkus.io. Oops, Quarkus.io blog. So we just today released 2.2 Alpha 1, and the feature, like the mind-blowing testing feature, is this. You need to see this video. What Stuart did here is just amazing. Basically, what it is that when you're running dev mode, like I was doing ambient Quarkus dev, Quarkus will run your tests in the background. For every change you make, it'll only run the tests that are affected by that change, and that happens continuously while you're either coding your application or changing your tests. So I really, really suggest that people interested in testing check this video out.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Actually, this is also a good question to maybe ask right now. So when you're talking about like how we could pull, like it would automatically pull down Postgres for doing your database test, and you kind of showed you can like also specify a different image. Now, what if that image is pulling from like a private repo, like you're pulling from your company repo because you already have your specific kind of like database set up? And also, is it just databases, or can it be other services like a Kafka service for doing like messaging?
Okay, great. I'll start with the second thing. So we have the infrastructure in place to pull down anything we want, but we haven't wired it in. So at the moment, all we've wired in is relational databases and MongoDB. Definitely Kafka and like Redis are the next steps to enable. So that'll come really soon. Now for the first part, I think we have configuration. I'm pretty sure we do. I'm pretty sure we have configuration for the dev services. Actually, no, we only have image names. So yeah, that would be an enhancement that we definitely need to make to be able to specify the registry and like credentials to actually pull down these images.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, that's all. No other questions right now. So if there's any other thing you wanted to show off, then.
What else could we show?
Well, we can show the native.
Yeah,
the native image, right? So basically, while we were talking earlier, I built the native image version of the application. So in Quarkus, all you do is you add this Maven profile, the D native or P native. What it does then, after it creates the Quarkus jar, it'll use GraalVM to make that jar into a native image. And if I run it, this one started in 14 milliseconds. So that's pretty pretty insane. And it's hello, I'm pretty sure. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like the final stage that we see, like, not every user is going to take, because not every user needs this. But if you need like really, really small application that starts very, very, very fast, then this is the way to go.
Yeah.
Nice.
And as you saw, the tooling is in a Docker container, so you don't have to install anything. You just put -d native, and we put down the Docker container, and we run the compiler, and you're done.
Exactly.
It takes a long time to compile comparatively, but that's the Graal compiler. It does a lot. It does a lot more than just turn your Java code into machine code.
Yeah, it has to exhaustively kind of find all the different paths and all that
Exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I guess one thing that's maybe a little bit different, I don't know if anybody's you've seen test or play with it, but I've seen some people kind of also kind of this past week kind of talk about using Java as like a scripting language. So like if I'm terrible with Bash and stuff like that. Like I just barely know like CD and LS. Have you seen anybody kind of like mess with Quarkus using it to write Bash script out?
Actually, that is a very, very good question, because one of our Quarkus engineers has created this thing called JBang. So JBang is exactly what you're describing, which is like using Java for scripting. And this it doesn't require Quarkus, but it integrates very well with Quarkus. So in the examples here, yeah, you just like write one file, and it works like a script. You can download dependencies. You can interact with Quarkus. You can do anything you want. So that's JBang. It's called JBang. Yeah. Definitely check that out if you're interested in scripting in Java.
So what you can do with Quarkus that we didn't touch on is Quarkus isn't just this framework for app servers. It's a framework for Java. So it's got pickling support, but actually you can just write a Java normal Java main, create a Java application using Quarkus. You don't need to have the web component.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So that offers up the possibility, if people are interested in creating native desktop applications in Java using Quarkus.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah, that's actually something I think I was actually planning on like exploring here pretty soon for like maybe a blog article coming up, because I'm like, oh, I've just never thought about that, and that's very helpful for me because like I'm just when I get in, like I just know very basic Bash scripting. Like I'm like I have no idea what's going on here. So we got another question. Is there integration with SAM to deploy a native image to AWS Lambda? Is there a guided migration from Spring Boot to Quarkus? And I guess also maybe not just Lambda, but maybe the other popular serverless platforms, if that makes sense as well.
Yes, so that's of course, yes, we have integration with AWS Lambda. We have integration with Google Cloud, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Google Cloud is there. We have some Google Cloud stuff, and I think we have Azure as well. Yeah, Azure Functions. So yeah, we have integration with the basic services of these cloud providers. So that should just work out of the box. There's guides on how to do that. Now, for the question about migrating from Spring Boot to Quarkus, we have various guides, and there's a few blog posts describing like things like that. But there will be soon. I don't know how soon, so I can't really tell like specifically, but there will be soon a very good resource from someone in Red Hat that addresses that topic specifically and comprehensively.
Nice.
So, Georgia, what about the funky stuff? Can you talk to that?
Funky. So yeah, funky. Basically, what funky is, it's an abstraction layer on top of the cloud providers. So basically, you would use a Quarkus API, which would abstract away, like entirely abstract away, like AWS Lambda or Google or Azure Functions. And basically you'd theoretically be portable between these clouds. So you write like a Quarkus, you use this like very simple API, annotation-based API, and then you can deploy to whichever of these clouds without being actually tied into them. So that's what that is. We have guides for that, and we have more resources. We've talked about that on Quarkus Insights. So Quarkus Insights is basically our like YouTube channel that we have every week now, I think.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we talk about one of them we've talked about is Funky. Yeah, going to Funky Town. So, oops, I clicked on the wrong thing maybe. But yeah, so if you want to see the insights, here it is. And Bill Burke, who created this framework, has like gives like all the information on how to use it. But actually, it's super simple. It's like one annotation, so it should be very easy for anyone to pick up and
it's
write.
the fact you write your serverless function, and then
you just write one function.
You write it once, and then you just change one thing, and you deploy to a different cloud. Using a different service. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah,
nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, I'm sort of brain is dead.
All right. Let's see. If anybody has any questions, like we have like maybe one more. But yeah, get them here, and we'll kind of get this wrapped up here in a couple of minutes. Because also it is getting past 6:30 our local time, so I'm guessing people want to get to lunch, or dinner, I guess is to say. And yeah, it's really late your time, Steve. So I'm sure you want to get to bed here pretty soon.
Even later for Georgius, but we won't say that.
So yeah, do the Funky extensions require building provider specific releases?
I don't really get that. What is the question? Does it depend on like specific versions of AWS or Google Cloud or something like that?
Maybe Brandon will provide some clarification here. Let's give him a moment to update that question.
Sure.
Well, so while we're waiting, just to wrap this up, obviously, if you want to know more, you go to quarkus.io, and that's the website. Quarkus.io is also the Twitter handle, and if you don't find it there, then reach out to me, find me on LinkedIn, or obviously talk to Billy to contact me. If you have any asks about more about the Quarkus, you want to talk to Quarkus developers, then the best place is to come to our Zulip thing and turn up and ask questions there. Though probably if you have a basic Quarkus question, the simplest answer is to go to Stack Overflow and just post, because there's a community there answering the questions.
All right, so Brandon updated this question. Hopefully it's more clear now. Does it require creating a specific release of the application with that cloud provider Funky implementation?
I don't know the answer to that one, unfortunately. I haven't developed Funky, so unfortunately, I don't know. I can if you reach out to us like on Zulip, then we'll definitely get you a authoritative answer.
Great. Yeah, and send me those links, and I'll be sure to also post those into the details of this video description. So again, if someone's here watching this in the future, they can know where to go to ask questions about Quarkus. And also be sure to send me if these slides are online anywhere. I can post them there as well. So, all right. It's getting pretty late. So I think that's maybe all the questions. So yeah, thank you so much, Steve and George, for coming and presenting on it. This was a really great presentation. And then we'll get it figured out then when it comes to getting out some swag as well. So I know some people that know some people. So yeah, we can get that hopefully figured out here. So all right.
Well, it was great. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you very much. All right.
That was awesome. Thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.